Welcome back to the Staff in Trenchcoat. I'm Raymond Magdallan, here as always with my co-host Pope Jupiter.
What's up, guys?
Today we are talking about For Love of Magic by Simon R. Green. And today we hope to be having maybe our first actual disagreement, our first difference of opinion. So we know that one of us feels one way and the other feels the opposite, but we have been particularly effective this time at not spoiling any of our opinions to each other in text and whatever in between. And so I'll throw it to you first and give me your overview, and then I'll come back. We'll share the basic opinions, and then we'll start moving into our topics.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The last couple of books, we've kind of come into these without much prior discussion. The first few episodes, we'd talk about it. I'd read a little bit, and I'd be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And there was some stuff we'd talk
Obliquely.
about. Yeah, like we tried not to. We try to make these pretty natural. None of this is scripted. We've got like a bullet list of topics we want to talk about, but we don't want to like say things to each other that would be better on the podcast.
Right.
But we have discussed our general opinions, and I generally like this book. I have some issues with it. I think it's a bit of a mess, but I like it. I like it for what it is. But yeah, it's a fun story, and I think that it's got some good dialogue. I enjoyed
No. No, fuck that.
what
It has good dialogue.
I thought so.
Did we read the same fucking book?
I hope so.
This was the worst book we've done by far. It's not. I don't even think it's close. This was
Bold.
one of the most painful things to read that I think I might have ever completed.
Wow.
This is the first one. Like I would have just not read this if the option were available to me. If I A hadn't purchased it, and B I didn't have to film this. If I had just run across it and grabbed it off Kindle Unlimited or something for free, I would have got 10 pages in. That would have been it. And I'd be telling you like, oh, I bounced off that one. The dialogue is real bad. It's really bad. And I mean, I've got receipts.
All right, let's.
Should we do that? Go straight.
Yeah,
just go
yeah.
straight because you disagree.
I didn't think the dialogue was that bad. I thought it had some witty moments.
I would often, and I mean, it's one of those things where people will say like, oh, and then I rolled my eyes, or they'll describe a physical response to to an emotional thing, and everybody takes that as like maybe they did, maybe they didn't. So I want to stress here that I've never had this happen when I was reading a book before, but I routinely, multiple times a chapter, I would finish a paragraph and just have to kind of, I read them on my phone, on the Kindle app, and just like set the phone down for a second and just go, and just take a minute, because it was so corny that I
it's
was
corny as
physically ill. And I know, I fucking know what your line of defense is going to be, and I hope you fall into my web of hate, because I know how you're going to defend this bullshit. And no, this is I am no longer a truly green enjoyer of this genre. Have I read 100 of them? No, but I've read enough of them now that I have some idea of what the sort of social kind of expectation underpinning of the genre is. And this is bad on that scale, not as somebody that's uninitiated. He didn't enter the library in the approved manner, muttered one of the guards. We only discovered the intruders were in here when one of the books informed on them for talking too loudly. Amanda tapped me surreptitiously on the arm. I'm about to introduce you to the queen of the Iceni, she said quietly. Be respectful. I don't do respectful, I said, especially with authority figures. It only encourages them. Do I need to go on?
No, I get the picture.
And it's all over. Something will happen, and then there's literally a paragraph where he's just like, and normally this would be hyperbole, but this is, I think, like, it's not a direct quote, but it is a true paraphrase. Our main character will just say, "I'm the outsider. I'm a badass. I beat people up." End quote. And then the story just continues. And the dialogue is, even when they're having, or just like Merlin is just like, "Catch you later." It, it, it it's so bad. Defend it.
So I think on review, I was probably taken in by the Doctor Who-ness of it all.
Yes.
So I believe Simon R. Green is British.
He is, as far as I believe from the Wikipedia.
The narrator was British,
Okay.
and it had a very, very strong Doctor Who energy to it from the beginning. You've got an otherwise mundane, normal world with one guy who knows what's going on, who's there, who goes around and fixes problems.
Just instead of a screwdriver, he has Amanda.
Well, instead of a screwdriver, he has
Or
an
maybe
Athame.
instead of the TARDIS.
Yeah, Amanda is his TARDIS, for sure. And the TARDIS gets more characterization in some series.
Okay, so
Yeah, I'm not defending the.
yeah, let me jump in, because I knew you were gonna do this shit. Because it's Doctor Who is not my favorite show. I'm not a fan,
Fair.
but it's good art.
Right.
This is bad art. I'm not making the claim that it doesn't. Like, he might have been trying to do Doctor Who, but it does not capture.
It doesn't.
Its Doctor Who-ness value is zero, even if it might be wearing a disfigured, horrifying facsimile mask of a parody of Doctor Who. You've insulted Doctor Who, and I feel compelled to defend it, even though it's not something that I would enjoy.
It definitely was dollar store Doctor Who, to be clear.
It's from Temu.
Yeah. It's Doctor Who at home in the hood. Which is I might have to go back and read some other Simon R. Green because I think
Isn't he like a well-established,
Yeah,
long-running?
like,
yeah,
that
so
was-
I don't know what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was a medical event
Or if
surrounding this, or
not to speculate or anything. This was something to fulfill a contract. I mean, it felt very much like one of those children's adventures through history books, but written by Paul Verhoeven. Someone congenitally incapable of writing for children.
because this is not billed. This is just a
It's full adult.
full adult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a YA. It's not. It is.
So no defense there. I don't care. It doesn't. The crimes that he committed here can't be couched within its intended audience. He wanted adults, presumably adults that like books, to read this, and that this is a war crime.
Well, it wouldn't be the first major fantasy author with a large fan base who we decided was a shit author. Although this is one that I'm gonna have to take a second opinion on because I'm not convinced that. I agree, the writing was not good. I enjoyed the story. I still enjoyed the story overall, but the writing was not good.
The purpose of the podcast is not to shit on authors. I would much prefer if I found the stuff compelling.
Absolutely.
And I think for the most part we have been fair. So like I don't relish in the fact that I thought this was so bad, but
No, but
I
it's
want to just report the way that I felt reading it, and I mean it just does. It ranks up there with some of the worst books I've ever read. And again, I do think that it probably is the worst book I've ever read that I, read every page. And trying to think of some redeeming quality, the narrative itself, the plot, is just awful. The resolution of it at the end is, it's just dumb. The final scene where he just like, the bad guy literally stops and does a speech, and then the main character just like steps forward and just puts his knife to him and is like, don't make your guys drop their guns. Like that's essentially the climax of the novel. Are you fucking kidding me? 300 and what was it, 390 pages or 290?
I think it's 290. Yeah.
All of that build up, and then like the whole time you assume that there's going to be some like interesting resolution to Amanda, and then nope.
She's just the puka,
which is just a magical creature. It's really powerful, so it's not, there's no, and if there is like a 5-head 3D chess myth and lore, judo going on there that I don't know about, it's not in the text.
There was the one myth that they mentioned about the puka, but I don't remember.
And she's Merlin's mom.
Well, he's Merlin's dad.
Time.
Yeah. He's Merlin's dad. So
I guess it's just it's about to get petty. Because I feel like you were saying like it's like somebody writing for children or for YA that can't do it correctly, and I think it's like a child trying to write an adult fantasy. If you told me that this was, frankly, if you told me this was a high schooler, like the Aragon guy or something, I would be like, okay, that's really mid. I would actually like expect higher from the top crust of like high school writers, because I mean it seems like something that was like the storyboarding and preparation for it was like 5 minutes in a coffee shop with 3 people where they all just shit out different things and put it all onto a page and convinced each other that somebody should spend however long it took to write it.
Right.
I mean, at the risk of getting a little bit, we don't really typically do just like we're going to summarize the whole plot, but I mean, the basic premise is, for reasons that are never made clear, he and his father were an entity known as the Outsider, who can see magic, and he goes around essentially just, and again, it's another fucking police procedural. Like, what is the, I know this is tangential even to the tangent that I was just going on, but what is the deal with this genre and the fucking cop love?
I think it's that it's rooted in a lot of noir fiction, which is a lot of detective and cop stories. Like, this is urban fantasy.
That's fine. But then I just feel like that's something that's a. Is there no writer that respects the genre enough to, like, I don't know, progress it, or like come up with a narrative backdrop of meaning that isn't the. Because I feel like it's to the point now where it's basically the fantasy genre. The equivalent in high fantasy would just be if every fucking book was just a ring, and they had to take the ring to a spot. And I'm not talking about that in like the loose, we're pointing out similarities in narrative. I'm saying like it's literal 1-to-1. Every story is Ring of Power has to go to Mordor.
Right.
And they just, the riffing only occurs outside of that main thing. And
I would argue that the police procedural nature of this is not as, I mean, this is basically an adventure through time story. The
No, but it's literally always
I
the
mean,
Sherlock Holmes dynamic where the main character is it. I don't know. There's something about it that it's greasy, and I don't like it. There's a deceptive quality to the structure of the narrative where always the main character is essentially passively propping up the idea of the militarized police state, and but there is this intentional single order of separation where they don't actually carry the badge, they're a consultant, they're removed by one step, and so it's almost like this nasty writer trick where they're getting you to fall in love with this main character and passively buy into a bunch of police norms by virtue of leveraging the narrative events to, in the gap of that one order of separation from them just being a cop.
I get what you're saying. That essentially, even though they may be a private detective or, like I said, a consultant or whatever, and they may say a lot of stuff about how they don't respect authority or this and that, they still ultimately uphold that authority and reify it. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, hit us up in email or whatever. Send us an email of your favorite authors who you think are bucking that trend, or who are progressing the genre away from police procedurals and detective novels. Because, I mean, there are a couple of. Part of the reason I picked this author was that I've read Simon R. Green before, and I thought I enjoyed his books before. They were a little on the gritty and edgy side, which is fine. I enjoy that stuff. But he's got two main series of his that I read. Is the Nightside series, which is about a private detective, and then the Drood series, which is about a family of essentially ancient super spies who help keep society.
So this is just all he does.
Yeah, I mean,
And I don't
he
know,
very
I mean,
much writes detectives, and
I could see the defense being made that I'm conflating the genre structure with the plot element, in the sense that maybe people wouldn't buy my premise of it's equivalent to like the Ring of Power Mordor. I but then I guess I just don't like the genre because I there's a certain degree of predictability that I just don't think is masked, because of course all genres are going to have the predictable elements.
mm-hmm.
This genre, I guess, just doesn't do a good enough job for me of like masking it, and so it's
that
on
may be
display.
that may be my fault that I have not delved deeply into what.
But I mean, we've done like 4 or 5 of these now. I feel like that's at least a good enough sampling size that, if only 2 out of 5 of them are representative, then that's enough to form just like some basic opinions for the purpose of bullshitting on the podcast. I think. Again, I'm not making the argument that this is a fully thought out like white paper level theory on the topic, but
See our next publication and what will we even publish in?
I guess probably Journal of the Fantastic and the Arts would be the one for, or some sci-fi journal. Who knows? Set that aside, then. I don't like the crime procedural thing. I liked Sherlock Holmes, but I think that guy could have just wrote about a chunk of wood, and it would have been good. And I mean, I liked the show. It's a Sherlock Holmes variant, but Elementary.
Mm.
I thought that was really good. I can enjoy a police procedural. It's just that, and maybe again we're getting back into it's that part is predictable, and it's like, when's the vampire gonna show up? When's the werewolf gonna show up?
Just to kind of reinforce your bona fides, one of your favorite shows is Burn Notice, right? And that's literally about a CIA spook trying to get back into being a CIA spook.
That might just straight up be my favorite piece of media.
Yeah.
Of all, at least like of serial television media for sure. That's my favorite of all time. And that was a cheesy ass show.
Yeah.
I would say even corny. Like
Oh,
even I
absolutely.
think some people could
I mean,
rightly,
anything with Bruce Campbell has at least like an 80% cheese factor.
yeah, love me some Bruce Campbell.
Oh, hell yeah.
I just think they cast that show really well, and there weren't and
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a character that was annoying. They were all just really good characters, really well acted.
Even the mom, she had her annoying quirks, but they never lingered on it long enough for it to be annoying, I thought.
No, and the female lead,
Fiona.
Fiona,
Oh,
was amazing.
I'm always a sucker for an Irish accent anyway.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about on that vector. I mean, obviously she was lovely.
Like, she was an amazing, like, character who also happened to
And
be a
like
hot
her
female.
lines were just delivered really well, and it was the cheesy badass type
Uh huh.
archetype, but she did it so well that you just bought into it immediately. And of course, the main character was fantastic too. But
Right.
in any event, yeah, I mean,
So, like, we're not congenitally incapable of enjoying, like, police procedurals or movies, media about spies or anything like that. Like, they can be done well, they can be enjoyable, but
and so you have this outsider who is our Sherlock Holmes, our police consultant, and he ends up on this quest with this really powerful magical being. They just go through a slew of the most obvious, cliched literary sections. We've got it starts with Beowulf,
Beowulf,
and then Camelot.
Camelot,
And
Shakespeare,
there's there in there somewhere. There's the Queen Boudica,
yes,
and then Frankenstein, and then Shakespeare. They're in Shakespeare's playhouse anyway. It's Christopher Marlowe.
yeah.
I
I will admit the Shakespeare nerd in me did kind of enjoy that whole bit.
I don't think I liked Marlowe. I can't remember if it was Marlowe or Spencer that wrote The Shoemaker's Holiday. My fellow English majors hit me up in the comments. I can't remember, but The Shoemaker's Holiday was actually a fucking slapper. It was a really good play just to like have to read.
Yeah.
So it may be that I like Marlowe, but in any event, then they end up there's a sequence where they're at Stonehenge.
Yes.
And so again, with maybe the exception of the fairly well done Christopher Marlowe section, every other one of those would have been, again, not intentionally being petty, but they're what I would have expected any 15 to 18-year-old high school student, if they were having to like write a short story for English class that included these are the literary periods that we studied this section.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with a list of 5 of them and write me a story that includes these.
Yeah,
If
we're
you
gonna
got
find out in
this-
5 years that this was like Simon R. Green's son's like paper he wrote, a creative writing exercise to talk about like 5 different historical periods.
It to me reads like a kid that wrote a story for a contest and didn't win, but his dad was rich, so he just published it anyway.
Yeah, and it's especially interesting because Simon R. Green is a prolific author. He's written a number of novels, and they all pretty much have been in the same shared universe sometimes along different timelines, sometimes in the same universe. And this story would actually repudiate those. It cannot be in the same universe because in that universe, magic like still exists like fully, but it's hidden underground. The night side is this
I mean, we don't have to dig far enough
But
to talk about it. Like this abomination could. It is not the biggest problem that
No.
it might be causing some issues for his overarching literary universe.
well, I just think it's interesting to contrast that to his other work, that this is such a departure in world.
Right, yeah, because I haven't read any of his other works, of course. And then the execution of the plot was just infuriating. The she so
You know what this almost-
the culmination is he just writes a different word in a book.
That had already been crossed out before.
throughout the text, there are all these moments where they do something, and it turns out that he didn't really need to do it. Amanda was just wanting him to do it, and so he would fight all these people, and people would die and whatever, and then she's just like, "Haha, good job," and then heals everybody, and brings it.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
yeah. It's what thinking through it now, it feels like
You're losing your nerve.
a treatment of a pilot for an ongoing series. Like, this is the outline for the first season, and like they've got some bullshit in it because we'll figure that out later. And like the writing, crossing out a word and writing two words. He wrote science and technology, or technology and magic, which
Yeah, he did.
um
He did do that,
uh
and it just goes on.
but
and on.
it feels like like that's the unobtainium of this story, that we'll fix it later, and then they just never got around to fixing it. Like, that's I honestly thought, as I was reading, I was like, okay, so there's no way they're going to wrap all this up where this is going to be the first in a series. And then it was like, and we all lived.
I think it is. I think it is a first in a series, isn't it? Or is it a
That we all
standalone?
lived. That ends with a we all lived happily ever after.
Yeah, I thought there was more books, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, this book just came out this year.
Oh, okay.
Or
Right.
last
Then,
year.
yeah, it might just be a standalone. May we pray that it is so.
I don't know how. I mean,
When was the last time you saw an unironic Ernest and then they lived happily ever after?
right?
Like in black and white. It's just on the page. It's not. There's no irony to it. It's not a joke. It's earnestly delivered, and set apart from the final paragraph to draw your eye to it.
Oh my God, was it? I listened to it, obviously, like always. So it was.
Yeah. So most of the events of the narrative are just an overtly contrived. You had to learn, so I had you do this, or watch these people die, or whatever the case is, because later on I need you to stand your ground, and it builds up, and it builds up, and it builds up, and then it's a fucking clown. That's what comes out of the door of hell. At the one of the climaxes of the novel is a fucking clown.
Yeah. What else would come from hell?
Well, evidently next was his dad.
Yeah.
Just crazy levels of cheese.
I have to say that my first reaction to, no, my father was a hardworking man who was dedicated to his job. I don't know that I would enjoy, like, you can be hardworking and dedicated to your job as a virtue. Like, obviously, we all know people who they're dedicated as a vice. Like, it's their crack is working, their job, whatever. But like, you can do that as a positive thing. But if you're still like if there is a heaven, if there is like this eternal paradise, whatever, I would hope that it would not require, especially a job like The Outsider, like whatever shit
Yeah.
we talk about it. Like, it seems like it's a tough job with dangers and risks, and that's not something I want to be doing for eternity.
No, well, and I guess now is as good a time as any. Like my real critique of the novel, the thing that I think is most, to me at least, abhorrent, is that it is essentially set up as it's like a Christian story, and his solution is to pair science and magic, because one alone is not sufficient to bring about the utopia. You need both.
Right.
But the way that it's set up, magic, in this sense, is standing in for religious belief. And he's co-opting fantasy itself as a grotesque mechanism by which to justify the idea of religion.
I guess I didn't really get that angle on it. I definitely had issues with the way they made it seem like he kept repeatedly saying, magic is harmful. We normal people don't have a defense against it. It's like, well, but if magic is as easy to learn as driving a car, or how to program in Java, then normal people can have a defense against it. I mean, this is one thing that I've always kind of had an issue with like urban fantasy specifically, but like fantasy books in general, where there's magic that people can learn. And obviously, there are a lot of stories where magic is not something people can learn. It's something that you're either born with or you're not. But in stories where you can learn magic, and the magic users just run roughshod over the non-magic users, it's like, no. Unless it's a Jordan situation where the magic users actually do either directly, indirectly, or behind the scenes control the society, like that's what that kind of power would do to society. And if that, what I'm trying to say is that this idea that people are vulnerable to magic in the world that Jack is from because they don't know it's there. They cannot defend themselves from it because there's no way to learn how to. But if magic were real, if magic were more generally known, more, were available like it was in the Boudica scene, like it was implied it was supposed to be, then people could defend themselves from the dangers of magic, which are, I mean, other than the obvious, left generally vague, because this is very much a story with magic as opposed to a story with a magic system.
Well, right, but he's literally working as an agent of God on like a heaven mission to sort of like correct their vision. I mean, he's challenging hell. It's stop hell from ruining the world, get the heaven book, and fix the problem. And I mean, the change that he makes is one that effectively, like an agent of heaven, has, through this grand travelogue through time, primed him to make, primed him to do.
It did feel like there was maybe a bit of a bootstrap time paradox there with, because there seemed to be something with the way that Amanda was involved with everything in history, but I mean, especially since because of her, wasn't it the Frankenstein's monster was able to take out the actual secret masters, and she brought him to the right position for him to do that.
I don't remember if Frankenstein usurped a previous set of secret masters, or he was the secret master, and that's what the term is for. I can't remember that precisely.
Well, what I remember is that the secret masters came together to make things run on technology instead of magic.
Right.
Because it was more stable, more simple, blah, 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 blah. And she was trying to correct that, and first she chose Frankenstein's monster because he was the result of this kind of thinking. Life created by technology instead of the magic of childbirth. And
wasn't there two guys before our hero, before Jack? Because there was also the one that he like tried to turn away from hell, and so she was like, "All right, I kill you," and then throws him into hell.
Yeah, there was him, and then the Frankenstein monster,
and then Jack. And then we also meet Christopher Marlowe, who was an outsider,
right,
at one time, but not evidently taken on the quest.
Right.
He had a different set of stuff going on as he wrote Faust.
Yeah, the implications seem to be that, like, I kind of got the impression from the way Marlowe was talking about it that the outsider was not necessarily, like, it was not something that was, like, ordained by magic or whatever, which would definitely lean into the Christian allegory, but that it was something created by, like, the society. Maybe that was me.
I'm not 100% sure on that exact detail, but that's okay. For me, the way that the narrative shaped up as the novel progressed.
Yes, now I remember. Sorry. So, I'm 99% sure that they said that that Amanda took Frankenstein's monster to destroy the secret masters, who were just a bunch of old, like, scientists. And he did, and then he took up the book and basically did what they were going to do, but more so.
Right.
So, I guess I interpreted that as they had already done it. She was trying to undo it, and Frankenstein's monster was like, "Oh, you thought we were going to undo it."
This is like the third book that we've done so far, where you get further into the book and you're just like, oh, we're doing the heaven and hell thing.
Yeah,
Super lame.
except
And,
this time, Hell has shades of Protocols of the Elders of Zion, but you know.
right. What about the fucking backpack?
Oh,
He
it's a Heward's handy haversack. Clearly,
he just has
yeah,
everything,
sure.
including one of the things I did like was the where he says I've got a squirt gun in here full of holy water,
Uh huh.
and it did evoke sort of I don't know, a silly potential scene where he's using a little squirt gun and killing vampires or something. And he just starts randomly, as far as I can tell, it's random. It's never mentioned, and at the very end of the book, he's like, "And then I did judo." Also, I knew judo the whole time.
Yeah.
And it does. The story reads like two kids having an argument about who would be the bigger, more badass superhero, and one kid always, keeps trying to retcon and add powers to his guy as the other kid talks.
Yeah, that's again one of those things. Like maybe it is a part of a series, but that backpack does seem like something you're setting up for because the fact that he had all these things in it. What did he pull out of it? His athame and the knuckle dusters.
And then we get a lot of descriptions of other items that are contained in it.
Right. Like aforementioned super soaker full of
Yeah.
holy water. Yeah, it's never really, and no one really tries to take it away from him either.
No, people even do
People who know
get it
who
and
he,
they throw it to the side. They're just like, this isn't important.
I mean, it seems like aside from his sight, which is first introduced as like a mage sight, just sea magic type thing, and but is implied to be like a Ghost Rider vengeance sight type ability that he never uses. He just threatens people with.
Yeah, but then he stops using it and it only activates when Amanda touches him for a long time. And then at the very end of the book, then all of a sudden he controls it again. I don't think it's not implied that he actually loses the ability to do it when he
Yeah, he
wants,
just stops using
but
it.
he stops using it and Amanda just does it for him.
Right.
And then, I mean, just the fucking scene in the library where the Slender appears, and just the dialogue that Slender has, where he's just like, I'm gonna kill you because I don't like you.
Yeah. It. Yeah, I did not like the.
I'm a bad guy. Actual quotation.
Uh huh. Listen, I fully rescind that the dialogue was okay.
All right, well, you heard it here first. Book battle goes to staff. Uh, all right, so I guess moving into a more focused discussion, because I could go on just taking every scene that we can remember and telling you why I hated it.
I will say I did have two lines that I specifically wrote down because I thought they were kind of nice, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
By all means.
The first one that I thought was really simple. Be a man, cheat hell back.
Oh, cheat hell back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's certainly better than I'm gonna kill you because I don't like you, or whatever the fuck it was that Slender said.
And I believe this was a Merlin line. Reports of my power have been greatly exaggerated, usually by me.
Yeah, but he uses that joke twice,
Well, that was from the first time.
and doesn't later on doesn't he say somebody says the rumors of me not being as powerful anymore? There's some variant on that. Have been greatly exaggerated. I think Merwin says it.
Yeah.
So F minus. You can't. Again, I feel like this is my curse. As the like, this is one of the things I find myself doing, and I understand that some people are going to be like, "Oh, this guy just always makes the same remark, but it's must just be the books that we're picking. But was there not an editor? Did s- or did somebody read that and go like, ah, second time for the literal identical same joke? Greenlight it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make that like,
There was a room at one time where Simon R. Green sat with someone to whom he was going to pay money that had read his book, and the guy was just like, the dialogue, fire, send it. No notes. Need a revision? No.
which is worse, that he said no notes or that he had notes and Simon R. Green was like, I'm not interested.
I'm the real artist here.
Yes.
Who are you to alter perfection? I don't know. I choose to believe that if it is an arrogance thing, it's just the lack of editing. I hope it's not that he had people telling him, "Hey, this sucks," and he was like,
Yeah.
"No, it's straight good. You're just
Well,
you're wrong, and I'm right because I'm author man."
which is worse, to find out that an author was only good because of their editor, or to find out that an author.
Yeah, because that means everybody did their job. That's great. The author writes a good story, but it's imperfect, and the editor comes in and fixes the rough edges, offers good critique, and then the author either makes the changes and produces something worthy of being published, or they fall on their sword with honor and don't publish it. Simon R. Green did neither. he chose he chose the third path, the path of darkness. And
Publish it anyway.
yes, either he didn't have an editor, or he had a really bad one, or he had a good one and he went full Emperor Palpatine and was like, "No, I have unlimited power. Uh, publish it."
I do wonder how many authors in this day and age just have enough clout to, say, this doesn't need editing. I know how to write.
Or more cynically, he could just know, and the editor could know, but their calculation wasn't how good of an art piece is this, and it was more, will the idiots buy it?
Right. That too.
Yeah, they'll buy this. The the dialogue is cheesy. It was a single,
It was capitalism all along.
yeah, it was capitalism all along. Uh, you know, then maybe they're just sitting there and like, yeah, the dialogue's pretty scuffed. It was a one time, because if this was just an unedited, this is the first draft,
Like
this could be
again,
made into a good story.
if this was the result of some sort of like 48-hour writing sprint or something.
Yes.
you
Where
know,
where his choices were, I get the project done in the given time, or like I get the ideas out, or I sit here and try and think of dialogue.
Have you seen that Folding Ideas video about like for-profit writing?
I don't think so.
It's really good. You should watch it. But
Well, all his videos are.
uh, yeah, saying a Folding Ideas video is good is like saying water is wet.
Yeah.
But he was looking into the for-profit, like people who will pay someone on like Fiverr or whatever to write 20,000 words or whatever, and I think it was 30,000 words is the target he set, and then you publish that on the Amazon self-publishing and like blast it out on social media, and you do that like once or twice a month. A few people buy it, and you make some money. It's one of those get rich quick side hustle things.
Okay.
So he wanted to kind of delve into what it would be like trying to write, or why the quality of these books is so horrendous. So he wrote a 30,000 word book in like 30 days.
Okay. Well, I mean that's reasonable. You could do okay at that. 1,000 words a day. That's enough time that if you spend a couple hours a day, that's enough time to
Well,
write it and edit.
this
it
isn't a
to some
novel, though.
degree. Oh.
It's a technical book.
Oh.
Yes. So that was his whole point, is that these aren't novels. These are like books about conspiracies or
Well, that's not a technical manual.
but nonfiction, I guess is what I meant to say.
Okay.
And he
So it could be opinion based.
yes. So that is one way, but if you're hiring someone else to write it, you can't really do opinion. I mean, you can, but that's
Right. So anyway, he pays people to write this stuff, and
Right.
then
And he by the end of it, he wrote his book, and he said that the key to hitting the word count was to be shallow, broad, and abuse quotes. And he said that the websites usually have like no more than 10% of the text can be direct quotes from sources to prevent someone from just like writing, 50,
there,
15,000 words.
there's an
that are just-
exact plagiarism line
Right.
that they don't want to cross.
Yeah. And so his whole point is that writing that fast for nonfiction, unless you're already an expert on the subject, you need to be broad and shallow, and you can't really go into detail or examine nuance. It's got to be,
Right, as you
you
said.
know. So that's kind of what this has me wondering if. And to be clear, I'm not accusing Simon R. Green of anything. This kind of has that write a story in the Simon R. Green style, almost like an AI type.
I thought
I don't
what you
think-
were going to say was that he might have like paid somebody to write
That's what
20,000
I'm-
words and then wrote, 50,000 or 70,000 or whatever of his own. So just
Yeah.
he was basically paying them for their idea. No, and again, I have said this on previous episodes, but it remains true. If the AI is going to be able to just write books soon, they're probably going to be better than this. And it's kind of like, if we can't step it up and write better stuff, then just bring on the AI, I guess. Because is this what we're trying to save? Is this what we're worried about? Is that if the AI gets too powerful, that like we won't be able to enjoy the majesty of For Love of Magic by Simon R. Green? Is this what we're fighting for?
If this was actually written by a human, unironically, yes. Because while we may disagree with the message of it,
I mostly disagree with its mechanical quality. I guess like I'll just I'll just like for once I'll just rip the mustache off and it's like, yeah, this is my like graduate school, I read books and I know stuff, I'm an academic and this book is shit.
sorry, I can't hear you in that ivory tower up there.
Yeah, sorry, I try not to, but it's just bad. I appeal to authority. I just don't. It breaks all the rules of good writing, like the basic ones that you could find if you just Googled how to be a good writer. Have strong dialogue, like take time and edit things. Don't have every sentence have the form of I name a thing and then I always have an adjective. And excessive use of just magnifier words that are most of the time they're also adjectives, but nothing is soft. It's always really soft. Those types of things are on every page, all over the place. The
Which is
story
usually
pacing
the
is
hallmark of someone trying to pad a word count.
yes. So that's my main criticism is that I just don't think it was well mechanically written. And then yes, I also thought that some of the potential deeper level readings of the text had some odious elements to it. But then also like the plot itself just wasn't good. The Camelot scene I thought was written fairly well of the scenes. On the scale of this text. I enjoyed that part the most. It is cool to see dragons get shot by laser guns in a vacuum.
I mean, that definitely was quite literal Deus Ex Machina right there. It's like, there's no way they can beat these dragons, literal. And then fucking Merlin, they used up too much magic in surviving the laser blast, so I was able to just overpower them. And it's like, really, dude? So magic is just like a battery meter?
Yeah, well, and I mean,
I guess
it
this
is.
is-
The
this
book
is-
is For Love of Deus Ex Machina.
This is the
Amanda
the-
is.
Yeah. I guess this is the fantasy nerd in me who's just like, dragons are difficult to subdue because of their inherent magic. Their skin is resistant to magic. Even if they're fucking dead asleep, exhausted, they've flown around the world 1,000 times. They're sleeping the Odin's. They're sleeping the Odin sleep. You know, they're still that highly resistant to magic. Like that is consistent across all Western fantasy stories. It is that highly magical resistance of dragons. And then here it's like, well, yes, they're resistant to magic when they're not tired. You see, when they get tired, their magic resistance slips.
Yeah,
Then they can.
I tend to buck a lot of the genre norms for fantasy when I'm writing, and even when I got to the point where I had a dragon in my text, I was like, oh yeah, they're magic resistant.
Yeah,
That's a native attribute for that.
unicorns are pure and attracted to virgins. Dragons are big, tough, and greedy.
I would buck the big, the tough, and the greedy, but they can breathe fire / magic, and they are intelligent and magic resistant. For me, those are like the. If you mess with one of those, I guess I would almost feel like it's no longer a dragon. It's a different thing. It might be a dragon shaped story
Then it's a
element.
wyvern.
Yes. Well, I think that's actually actually, I think a wyvern is.
All wyverns are dragons. Not all dragons are wyverns, or
Yeah.
some bullshit like that.
And yeah, so and it's very much they just keep going from one scene to another, and it's just a bigger bad guy appears, but actually Amanda's just more powerful.
Yeah.
And they do that 5 times, and then the book's over. And I don't know. I can't take
felt
a
like
word.
it would have been something if it had been like, well, no magical creature can mess with that book, which has its own issues, but it's like a better way of why Jack has to be there, because if she's so powerful, why can't,
Doesn't she literally just say because of the rules? She just says there's there's the rules, and we're never told whose rules those are, because he's like, well, why does it have to be me? And she's like, those are the rules.
I think
There's rules for everything, even creatures like me.
I interpreted that less as a literal like rules of nature, rules of God, what rules of magic, whatever, and more like that was her River Song, spoilers answer. Like, it's not actually that's the rules. That's just her excuse, but that's not actually a better situation.
And there is so much of people announcing themselves in the text. It is fucking wild. Of people just being, I'm the outsider Anne. Or, just like people walk on stage and he tells you in the narrative voice who the person is that walked on stage, and the first thing the person says on stage is, I'm, and their name. And that's fucking rough, dude. Reads like notes for a stage actor. Stuff that we're not supposed to see. And I
mean, that just lends credence to my theory that this is a novelization of a treatment for a TV series proposal. Like, he pitched this to Amazon or Netflix, and they rejected it.
You were just like, heck W, no.
Fuck it, I'll turn it into a novel. Fuck you.
Minimal editing required. Simon, no. Mr. Green, please don't. And he's just like, yeah, shut up, kid. And just fucking pushes the big red button on his desk that just says publish or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know if is he a successful author or just a prolific one?
Is best-selling successful? I mean, I think he's been.
I would say that, yeah, that's a.
I mean,
it might not immediately put you in the upper echelon of crazy money producing authors, but I would think being on the bestseller list would at least be an indication that the book sold.
He is also 68. Just to.
No, that's too horrifying. It can't be the cognitive decline arc. I can't allow myself to. That's like it's like being a musician, being a writer. One of the huge draws is that you spend your lifetime Like, I have to believe that you can just keep getting better at it up to, near the very end of your life, barring a diagnosable, issue. Because you're going to slow down a little bit over time,
Right.
but there's also you're going to have types of perceptions that you wouldn't have had when you were younger. Like there's a give and take. So I understand that. But if we read a book from like 20 years ago, and he's just like a wordsmith, that would be crazy. I would be shocked. Again, unless we're talking about he's like, I'm retiring in a couple years. I'm just gonna ship these out. It's cheaper to not pay the editor. Like he's gone boomer style on the costs of publishing. It's like he doesn't want to leave the lights on when he's not in the room type situation. He just doesn't want to spend the money on an editor or whatever.
I'm seeing if I can find any stats on how much he's sold. He sold over 4 million copies. His books have sold over 3.8 million copies worldwide.
So he's made.
According to Goodreads, he has 332 books.
Yeah, so he's. Holy shit. What? What? That's like. Isn't that like 6 or 7 a year?
Well, he's been going.
For 40 years. It'd have to be more than 6 a year, right? 40 times 6, 240. If he's got 300 and change, my voice even cracked a little bit there because it's so preposterous.
So it does look like a lot of these are maybe omnibuses. So I don't think he's written and published 330 unique books.
But still, like a fuckload.
Yeah.
Like well over 100.
Yeah. Easy.
Easy. Which is still more than one every year, even if he's been doing it for 50 years. That's, it explains a lot.
Uh-huh. He basically got to start in 88, it said, when he, so he's only been going for a little less than 40 years.
Yeah, that's like Danielle Steele.
Yeah.
Levels of production at that point. But Danielle Steele can write.
Right.
So she has that going for her. But
Prior
so
to
fine,
this,
he's just like blasting them out as fast as he can.
I mean, Stephen King is a similarly successful, prolific author who I think is a.
But he's like a savant.
Wow.
He's like he's a hyper outlier.
He also wrote most of his books while he was like completely blasted on coke, so performance enhancing drugs.
As one does. And you can criticize his style or whatever, but he has the mechanics down, and in interviews, it seems like he has a really consistent, rigorous schedule that he adheres. He's one of these people where he had the whatever the natural luckiness of biology, of his particular genetic makeup. He got lucky there. And then he also had a life experience that was rich, and he also has really good self-control. And the mixture of that. But this is, I can buy that he just knows that he's mid. And he was like, I'm not going to get the sales. I'm not going to get rich on, one trilogy or 2 trilogies. If I want to make my millions off of this, I'm going to have to just drop these like 3 a year until I literally die. And he made it. He fucking did it. Well, because even if he got a really bad deal on the majority of those books, he still made several $1 million.
Yeah.
At least a couple, if he got shafted. But it's probably closer to.
Especially
he's probably made like $5 or $10 million.
And you got to think most of his stuff was written in like the 90s and early 2000s when there was more money in publishing. Like you could get a good deal on publishing,
and he certainly has taken advantage of the digital age as well. So maybe he's just like mostly businessman. He knows how many they're going to sell, and it's, I don't know. We don't have to justify his practice here. The writing for me was not good. Do we want to take our quick break, and I'll make coffee, and then we'll come back and do our actual bullet list discussion?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right,
We're back.
We're back from the break, and let's jump into a discussion of the violence in the text. Hit me up.
The violence was unremarkable. Um, it, it was pretty standard, like PG-13.
There was some like more gratuitous stuff, but that was always done to, what is it, a homunculus?
Yeah.
Some kind of a creature where, just like how they'll do with orcs or.
Yeah, any kind of damage to actual humans was elided over or just alluded to. Like the scene there in Sherwood Forest when Robin and uh, who else was with him when they're running through the burning woods, and they're talking about how they're constantly constantly taking fire damage, constantly burning. You know, he gets through, and like burns are no joke.
No, not from just like a forest fire. No.
And that's ignoring the smoke inhalation, which is going to kill you long before the burns are really going to disable you.
But again, all real threats in the novel, we sort of know by about 30% of the way through that Amanda is going to be able to just finger snap, literally finger snap the problems away.
Yeah,
She just heals everybody.
it's like they needed to put in a line or something in there that he needed to prove that it was worth saving or something for her powers to work on it, or they needed to
More like a fairy tale.
Yeah, because I mean it ends with happily ever after. It's a fairy tale,
Yeah.
a poorly written one, but a fairy tale.
Yeah, fairy tale nonetheless. Yeah.
And let's be honest, most of the classic fairy tales aren't that well written. Yeah, I mean the violence was, and they had acceptable targets, so they allowed themselves to get gratuitous. But the repeated references to ripping off the arm of Grendel and beating him with the wet end, it was the first time was a neat throwback to how Grendel is actually defeated in the actual Beowulf story. And then the repeating of it was just gratuitous.
Yeah, I mean, if what you want is a crime procedural and you want really low effort romance elements, there needs to be at least one werewolf and one vampire, or you won't be satisfied. And you don't care at all about plot or dialogue, then
There are still better books to read than this.
yeah, if you're watching this and you haven't read any Michael Moorcock, then you've already damaged yourself by reading this first. Just go read Michael Moorcock.
I guess I need to read go.
Well, we could definitely do one of his novels. It just wouldn't. We've kind of gotten onto a bent recently where we're trying to do from the current year, or I guess now we're kind of moving into where we're recording this. At what is it? Early February.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why I didn't just know that immediately, but whatever. We were trying to pick books from 2023 at least.
I don't see us deviating too much from that, but we can go back and do a Michael Moorcock at some point.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he's still writing or not. But so I thought that at least the descriptions of the combat and stuff was actually fairly good, with again the exception to it being that our guy will just, he's always got a new tool to pull out. He's got the super knuckle dusters.
Yeah.
And then he just, learns judo. Stuff like that is happening, but
it felt like that was some sort of bookend moment or like a callback, but he only was told that he needed to be able to defend himself once or twice. That wasn't this repeated thing that I remember. It was alluded to being a repeated thing. They told us that he'd been told that multiple times, that this was an ongoing argument. This was informed to us. It wasn't like a constant thing, and at the end, I know.
It just came off like a young kid writing and being like, and then I did a super cool karate kick. That's right. I know karate too.
Yeah. I know kung fu.
Yeah, it was really bad. But as far as the descriptions of the combat scenes, I thought those were among the better parts of the book. They were fairly well done, comparable, I would say, to most of the other stuff that we've read in terms of, being able to tell what's going on. And
Right.
he did get creative with a little bit here and there, and ultimately not super terrible. But what is terrible is his treatment of gender in the novel. It's where do you begin? And I guess we'll wrap in romance.
Did a single woman do anything of consequence in the entire book?
It depends on whether or not you were. Is Amanda a woman?
Well, yes, she presents as an adult human female, and I'm sure she would identify as a woman. To actually answer your question,
Because she's the puka,
right?
a word which I can't take seriously.
Well, he didn't invent it.
No, it's a real thing. It's a funny word.
I mean, it is kind of one of those things when you think about these concepts, which are now just fairy stories, fairy tales, whatever you want to call them, that we tell to kids. Like, they weren't originally written with the same sensibilities that we think about kids' literature today. Like, the Fae ain't no joke.
No.
So yeah, it is a little ridiculous to try to take seriously these things that are, at best, like the antagonists of children in the most popular stories. But
I mean, so far as I can tell, it's the whole narrative is about Jack's growth, as constructed by Amanda.
right,
But I guess it comes down to: do you believe that Amanda is acting out of her own interest, or essentially as an agent of the rules of heaven?
my interpretation was that she legitimately wanted to maintain a world of magic.
Right. Okay. So then that checks off the box of like, okay, so it is a strong female character. The problem is, it's literally she just can't do it unless she finds the right man.
Yeah, I mean, I would never describe Amanda as a strong female character because ultimately her whole job is to get a man to the right position to do the thing that needs to be done. And then once he's essentially given her permission, by the rules, whatever mechanism that is, then she does what she needs to do.
And of course, she has to fall in love with him. And
Yeah.
I think all the female characters that exist in the plot have direct sexual tension or whatever with the main character. With arguably, I guess maybe Queen Boudica does not, but
Yeah.
And what about Miriam, who there's basically no build up at all, and she goes from like maybe they're making flirty eyes at the very beginning, and then at the end she's just like, yeah, I'm gonna blow this guy's brains out because I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Really crazy, not believable, just kind of throwaway female characters.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that Jack is a good male character either. So again, it could just be that like the characters suck. But
again, it just feels so rushed. Like Miriam feels like someone we'd meet for like if this were a TV show. Then like the whole first sequence.
I mean, it's a princess who has to find a man that will do everything for her and save the world and be a hero so that can grant him permission for them to have a baby who is going to be the greatest baby ever. Merlin. It's gross.
Yeah.
Yucky, yucky, yucky. Shame on you, Simon R. Green. You fucking sexist.
He's a 68-year-old Brit. What do you expect? We're lucky the women have words. He put a woman in charge of the agency. Granted, it's the bad guy agency, but he put a woman in charge with a male assistant.
Always.
Seemed to be equal power.
I mean, she does power move execute him,
Absolutely.
but only
because she's in love with the
Yeah.
protagonist.
For unclear reasons.
Because he's hot?
He's too hot. He's the outsider.
And, I mean, prior to this, I would have said I love Simon R. Green, but his protagonists are always fucking Jack Bauer, the the asshole from The Last of Us,
And
Joel.
I mean, I can do cheesy male protagonists. Like, I think it's still up. No, I closed it. Before you came over to record, there's going to be some keyboard noise there, but whatever. Before you came over to record, I was rewatching the first season of Reacher on Amazon. And that's all that story is. It's just a big fucking beefy Chad that just shows up in a town and he's just like, yeah, everyone's attracted to me and I'm going to beat up all these bad guys.
Yeah.
It's great. I enjoy that. This...
It's funny because I watched the Jack Reacher film with Tom Cruise, which was an unintentional comedy because you've got Tom Cruise trying to act like that.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't work for me. That's not gonna work for me. But the guy they have on Amazon playing Reacher is
The clips I've seen.
he is this huge jacked guy.
Yeah.
So I buy into it, and he just did a really good job. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the point is, I can dig it, but have some fucking shame, Simon R. Green. Like, tone it the fuck down. Like, that's not what you should be doing in 2023 if you're trying to write your own version of a fairy tale, is just be that transparently. I don't even know. I mean, I was kind of joking when I was like, you fucking sexist, but also not.
I mean, I do kind of think if you're at all plugged into the zeitgeist, and I think it's difficult to be an urban fantasy author without at least, well, I would have said that previously without being plugged into the zeitgeist, but like this level of maiden syndrome and just, I mean, even gamers were making fun of it in Metroid Other M 10 fucking years ago. You know, and gamers are the worst people on the planet. I mean...
Yes.
It's called the gamer word for a reason.
This is true. I am absolutely flabbergasted at how brazen. Like, I would definitely not. I would never admit that I had read this in front of, like a scholar. Like a women's studies professor or something. Like, they would look at this and they'd be like, yeah, I respect you less now. You ate this? You nasty bitch.
So you're saying you won't be using this episode in your class in the future?
No. No, this one, no. No one can know. No one can know that I consumed this media. And I mean, and you knew it was coming the whole way through. And there's all this to do about, you'll never be able to love me if you know my true form. And her true form, nothing changes.
Yeah.
It's not as though she doesn't ever, like, reveal a true form to Jack that is somehow disenchanting, disgusting, abhorrent, or in any other way.
And, like, if you were to ask me what a puka looks like, basically an elf. Which, I don't know, most people consider elves pretty hot. I mean, unless they're like the little Keebler elves or whatever. Some people find them hot too, which I'm not judging.
I can get down.
Hey, you can get 3 of them.
Yeah, just run a Keebler train.
Oh, yeah.
Is it magically delicious? Is that the... Or no, that's Lucky Charms.
Yeah, that's Lucky Charms.
What's the fucking Keebler slogan?
We're magic fucking elves, we make cookies? I don't know.
I don't know, I was just going to say magically delicious again, so it's just stuck in my brain, evidently. All right, I don't know what passive racism we've just accidentally fallen into here, but jumping back out of that cesspool, the relationship between Amanda and Jack is hyper cringe in every sense of the word, and it does overshadow the rest of the novel. It is just wild to me that, again, even 68 is not that fucking old.
No.
And so the idea that he wrote this and he was just like, yeah, she just can't do anything unless she has the right man. And the editor was just like, cook.
Yeah.
Fire it up,
keep,
dude.
Keep spitting. Yeah.
That's, what is it? These are the bars. Amazing.
Yeah, I hate to keep going back to comparing it to Doctor Who, especially since you fairly rightfully pointed out it's an insult to compare them. But Amanda's. This definitely feels like it started off as a Doctor Who River Song fan fiction that they then just. I love how as we keep going on, we just keep coming with alternate reasons for this to exist, except as a book that
well,
he wrote.
also, like, it's become one of our go-to insults. It's like, this is a fan fiction.
I mean, kind of.
We have said that a few times, but this one really is. I mean, most of it is grammatically sound. I don't remember finding a whole lot of actual, type errors.
Yeah, it's not written by someone banging on
I
their keyboard.
I think that's what a type editor does.
Yeah.
So he paid for that, for sure. The next guy didn't do his job.
Well, I would assume the type editor would be after the text is.
You might think that, but in this case, clearly not. And so, I guess that's enough to do about gender. And then, I mean, like, I guess briefly we can just point out that, like, this is yet another novel that just doesn't fuck. There is no.
I mean, there's definitely sex happening in this world that's more apparent, but not.
None that I'm getting to enjoy.
No.
And given how, I'll just use the phrase "fuck it." Jack is just like a toxic masculine hero.
Oh yeah.
But he just doesn't. He never seals the deal. In any permutation.
Well, I mean, depending on your interpretation of happily ever after.
Okay, so that's right.
But that's the most fade to black you can get.
It is. It is. That's the final filter.
Well, no, we know they fuck because he's Merlin's dad. I mean.
Well, we know it happens eventually, but we don't get any. All we get in the scene are.
I will say there is more sex in Avatar, the Nickelodeon kids show, than in this.
Yes, good enough. So, as far as genre, you seem to. This was the defense I thought that you were going to fall back on, was that this is just the genre, man. This is expected. These are the.
No, that's not a defense.
The predetermined norms. I thought you were going to try and say that what I'm interpreting as bad is intentional cheesiness, and that's what the people like.
I mean, I definitely think there is a certain amount of intentional cheesiness in certain things that I think ended up the sum of that intentional cheesiness wound up being a toxically masculine male protagonist and a defenseless, well, mostly defenseless female protagonist. And antagonists who don't make a lot of sense.
And they're all just mustache twirlers.
Yeah.
I mean, bad for bad's sake. I'm evil because darkness.
And I'm trying to remember if there was anything other than magic is difficult to control and unpredictable. So in order to create, like, I kind of alluded to this with the Secret Masters having shades of the Protocols of Elders of Zion. And to be clear, they never really describe them or use any anti-Semitic tropes or even hints of it. It's just kind of this idea of a shadowy cabal of people who decide how the world runs. It's always going to hark back to that just because of how the world fucking works. But this idea that they decided that technology would work better to control things, so they used magic. The whole thing is just ill explained and ill.
Well, and that's even one of the mechanics in the narrative is him constantly being like, "Can you tell me this?" And she's like, "When you're ready." And then when it finally comes to the moment where she's going to tell him, it's just like a wet fart of a factoid about the world that they're in. It's always just like, "Well, these are the rules.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be able to stand your ground against the clown." Because what's the at the risk of invoking it? It's like the when they're learning how to do the Patronus.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? What's that?
Expecto Patronum. Oh,
No.
ridiculous.
No, what's the monster?
Oh, the boggart.
Boggart. It's basically that. That's the whole story. Is like you just have to be
You
ready.
got to be ready to face your
You
boggart.
got to be ready to face the boggart, and that will allow me to actually be a true woman when you're a good enough hero to face the boggart, and then I can give you my chastity.
Yeah.
Ew. Simon R. Green, pervert.
Dirty old man.
Dirty old man. Yeah, gross, Simon.
Yeah.
The fuck?
Women are not trophies to be won. We figured this out a long time ago. Like,
Well, and other characters are like, she can never love you back or whatever. There's this whole, where they're saying that she's not a winnable prize.
yeah.
But then it turns out that all of it...
Which I thought that would have been a great way to end it. Like, sorry, Jack. I mean, yeah, I think you're cool and all, but I'm an ancient fey creature. I don't really do the whole like monogamous commitment thing.
Okay, you're talking... I was thinking it would be cool if, they did, an actual... They fall in love, give us some actual descriptive scenes of intimacy, etc., and then it turns out she is just a bad guy. But I mean, then we'd just be making the critique of like it's the witch woman.
Right.
The way he constructed it, it was a buffet of potential sexisms, and he just chose one.
Right.
So one
yeah, because I
change.
think I'm a capricious fey creature, like that plays too much into the women as capricious, temptress, succubus, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That kind of trope. So yeah.
The femme fatale, I believe, is the hootie snooter word for it.
I mean, usually femme fatale is
Don't you fucking dare.
Fiona from Burn Notice.
No.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Okay. Let's not say we did.
Let's not argue about the boggart either. So, yeah, I mean, that's recap. The violence is pretty good. The gender, romance, and sex thing is Simon.
Very 80s of you.
Yeah, very bad. The writing style is the next bullet point that I have there, and I feel like we are getting to a point where maybe we're just over bashing for the sake of doing it, but
yeah, the horse corpse in the corner is just pulp at this point. So I think we can.
Yeah, his writing style was not for me. World building also not for me.
Yeah, and this is something where I also was disappointed. I mean, I mentioned how in his previous books he had this world that was, based on traditional Western fantasy tropes, fairy stories, that kind of thing, with some modern media stuff like mixed in or what have you. But this is just like, what if Grimm's was real, but what if Grimm's was real? I
And
mean, there's
plus Faustus.
plus Faustus, yes.
And I guess Frankenstein and Camelot. It's not really. It's
Yeah.
an okay metaphor, I guess.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean it's because obviously Grimm's didn't really do anything with like pukas or there aren't a lot of vampires in. Um,
but didn't you feel like even Jack was unimpressed with her revelation that she was the Puka? Because he's just like, yeah, okay.
yeah,
There's no problem. It just isn't a problem. And he kind of teases a few times that it's going to come out that like she's actually the bad guy, but then it doesn't. He's just like, yeah, all right.
that's why I think there's a different implying that there were different drafts of this and that this wasn't just the first draft he shat out onto a word processor and then sent to his publisher. But I feel like there was a draft where she was the bad guy as part of, or like I mentioned earlier the bootstrap time paradox, the idea that's the one where you are your own grandfather,
Right.
and so she helped. I thought it was going to come out that she helped do this, and so now she was trying to undo it, and that's why it's part of this time bootstrap paradox. But no, she was just, and the level of power she exhibits, like, was she unique? I mean,
I don't
she
know.
was the Puka. It was
Well, and what about the scene where they're in those cages? He spends a bunch of pages on how they can't. Neither. It seems like neither one of them can get out, and then Jack just punches his way out of it.
yeah. I mean,
He just punches his way out, and then in the next moment, oh, and Amanda's free too.
yeah,
Absolute shit. I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, what was the point of all this
Yeah,
description about like I breathed a little bit too hard and I moved just enough and I got impaled on my arm. And then in the next moment he finds a place to smash through he just Kool-Aid Man's out of this spike
Yeah.
cage.
and it's like, okay, let's say he's able to punch exactly on the lock and break open the door. Why does this cage have a door?
Well,
You-
even
you were-
Marlowe says there's no door I can kick in, or I don't
Yeah.
know, dude. It was. I couldn't
And the way
believe
that
it.
they talk Marlowe into, or not Marlowe, Faustus into betraying the secret masters, the forces of hell, whatever. Just like, did you ever think about not? Maybe not doing that? Well, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and they tricked Faustus into doing a harakiri.
Yeah.
Just wild. Just wild. It's a crazy world where it's kind of I guess you'd call it a time traveling theme park narrative, travelogue, and it's just a list of places you don't want to go. That
Again, this is visiting these multiple time periods and area and locations is the kind of thing you can do in a movie or TV show because in those you have a lot more space to show. How much time is spent just describing the location that would just be done with an establishing shot in in a movie or TV show. So I keep going back to this being a treatment for a movie or TV show because it feels like if you were to do the exact same story, the exact same events, but do them in a movie, I don't think things would feel as rushed, and I think it would come out better because there wouldn't be so much just establishing setting.
So you think instead of it being a really bad book, it should have been a bad TV show?
I think it would have been a mediocre TV show.
Okay. So talk to me about the Secret Masters, our big baddie.
I mean, apparently the entire technocracy can be taken out by one jacked zombie. I guess.
Well, he's fueled by hell,
Sure.
so he's infused with their power. But I mean, ultimately, he just in the most obtuse, over exaggerated way, he just does a speech, and then he even kind of breaks the fourth wall, and Jack is just like, "Don't interrupt me while I'm, thinking things through. Just hold off on your evil plan, and let me finish this other conversation I'm having." And the bad guy's just like, "Oh, take your time. I've already won." And then the solution is I stepped forward really fast and put my knife to his throat. That's the move. Horse shit. And he's just like, yeah, just all my guys, throw your weapons down, and then he assembles the Avengers by I just did like a really weird noise. I don't know what that was about. So he summons the Avengers from throughout time, and then it turns out Amanda's just had a small contingent of an army trapped in the painting the whole time because she was the one that was
Yeah.
in the painting in the first place, sucking people in to get his attention.
Yeah, that did feel like a almost a moral event horizon because, like, I mean, in a very real sense, they were tortured.
Yeah.
I mean, it does feel a
I mean, he says that to her, and she's just like, sometimes you have to take the long view.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so if she's got all these powers, she could have just made them not remember it. Like, I mean, I don't know what the ethics of it is, but as far as I'm aware, as long as you can completely excise a memory, it's not really going to have a lot of, knock-on effects down the road.
No, but the suffering still happened.
That's why the other option would be to, like...
No, she just did an evil. She just did an evil because,
Yeah.
that's what Simon wants us to know, is that you can actually just kind of be evil so long as you are, the correct trad wife material, and you're going to find your Giga Chad in the end.
Okay, but consequentially speaking, from a consequentialist point of view, I'm not saying that her doing that was worth it in this instance. But we can both envision a situation where that would be...
Where you torture some people, but then if you erase their memory, it's okay? No. I'm going to hard pass on that, Simon.
Not necessarily erase their memory, but, like, we're doing something like that would be... I'm not saying it would be good, but it would be morally acceptable.
I'm not saying... It would be better if she had, made them not have, effectively, like, heal the trauma. But narrative-wise, she shouldn't have done that. He knows she shouldn't have done that. He tells her you shouldn't have done that, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm playing 3D chess. You'll understand my moves at the end of the game." And he's just like, "Yeah, okay, because."
But that was at the end of the game.
Oh, that's yeah. Well, whatever. I'm not going to defend Simon here.
No, I'm saying that would be the response. You'll understand we are at the end game, bitch.
Yeah, and then they just... I mean, what can I say? They fix everything. And everything is better.
Pen stroke.
Yeah, and they literally live happily ever after.
Which, I mean...
By
the
whole beating up Frankenstein.
The whole world would be completely different than the world Jack left behind. Even if Amanda is able to, like, handle it. I mean, honestly, I kept expecting up until the end that this was going to turn out to be like a prequel to the Night Side, and this is how the Night Side was formed. But no, the implication at the end is that the modern world is like the world that when they went back to meet Boudica, where there's, centaurs and elves and dwarves and goblins and wizards and whatever wandering around the streets of London. And I mean, that sounds like a cool world. I would have loved to read a story in that world. That would have been a fun story, I think, maybe.
So that, yeah, there was some potential there for a better written story to be better,
Yeah.
but
But I mean, as far as the Secret Masters, I mean, this is an old trope. The idea of a group, or at least I've come across it in multiple sources, the idea of a group of people trying to suppress magic or something similar. And I mean, if we remove the supernatural and just like equate magic to technology, of course, it's an ancient trope that is in everything. You know,
and again, I could dig a story. I think magic versus science is an interesting archetype. It just wasn't here because the resolution is they just write it different in the Superbook,
I mean, I've
the
always,
Gigatome.
ever since I started playing Mage the Ascension, I've always just looked at technology as a different lens of a different way of viewing magic. Um, because in that cosmology, briefly, uh, what we consider technology is just magic that has been that the consensus has been acclimated to. Like in 1903, when the Wright brothers flew, they used magic to do it.
Right.
And then through various things in world made flying by pushing with engines and air pressure and lift and all these things became understood concepts that were real in the consensus, and that allowed powered fast heavier than air flight as an example. That's how magic works in the Mage the Ascension system. And that's how I've always liked to view magic, as just a different magic and technology are two sides of the same coin. They're not opposed inherently.
Right. Both are just different permutations of the
Understanding
mechanics of the universe.
exactly. Yeah. So I was really not happy with this idea that no, magic is awful and is only a bad thing and shouldn't exist, and technology is preferable. And it's like,
Well, they were challenging that idea.
I mean,
That was like their quest, right? Was to, she knew the truth that magic is can be good, and that the world should have magic in it.
but right up until the end, Jack was didn't seem convinced that magic was worth it.
Well, because that's what she had to convince him of. In order for him to be the right man to get it one time, uh, he had to prove that he could change his ways and embrace magic and change the book, and that was the key to her Robin Hood Men in Tights chastity belt called the locksmith. All right, that was For Love of Magic by Simon R. Green, a glowing review, 10 out of 10.
I think we do have to end it with our classic question, especially given how you started this. Better or worse than Knight Errant?
It's worse than Knight Errant.
We have a new low.
A new low.
Wow. Worse than the basically explicit propaganda.
If this was a series and our choices were we read the next book in this series or the next book in the Knights of the
Flaming
Star, I would totally go back and read another one of those novels. Because even in that first episode, it was an entertaining book. It was fun. It was just really bad propaganda, worthy of some of it being made fun of. So we did. I'm not reading any more of this.
Yeah.
There's no fucking chance. So it just is worse. So I don't
Fair
know
enough.
if that means from now on we ask, like, is it worse than For Love of Magic? I think we'll probably still just ask, is it worse than Knight Errant? Because that's the meme
Yeah.
that we've created here. But that's the true metric, right? Now you can understand our rating system. Anything Knight Errant or above, we're effectively saying it's not a regrettable purchase. You can read through it
Yeah.
there's going to be something to enjoy. If it's worse than Knight Errant, this is the first book I would say. I'm just saying, just skip it.
Refund. Don't
Just
read
don't.
this book.
Just don't waste your time. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a YouTuber I watch, Todd in the Shadows, who whenever he goes over, especially his worst list, he always talks about something that is more bad versus less good. And Knight Errant is
Less good.
Knight Errant is more bad.
Okay.
This is less good. There's
Okay.
not as much good about it to enjoy. And
Oh, okay. I see what you mean now.
yeah,
Yes.
it's just bad. Whereas Knight Errant had things to enjoy, but it was also
It had lots of bad stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a good worst of list has a bunch of things that are more bad and not things that are less good.
For Love of Magic, Simon R. Green, less good.
Less good.
Less good. We are next going to read Witch King, The Rising World, Book 1, by Martha Wells, who has a substantial amount of Amazon reviews and appears to be a really well-established author that I have not read, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to this one.
I am too. Even though the Amazon description is giving me flashbacks to the first descriptions I read of Twilight, because it had a similar dialogue. I didn't know you were a vampire type shit, but
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out.
I mean,
This is supposed to be a romance.
seems that way.
Okay. So yeah, Witch King, The Rising World, Book 1 by Martha Wells will be our next episode, and yeah, we hope to see you then. I'm Raymond Magdalene. I'm here with Pope Jupiter, and we will see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Staff Trenchcoat. Look for us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to shoot us an email at staffandtrenchcoat@gmail.com if you have a book recommendation, and we hope to see you in the next episode.